G'day. Thought I'd put this little video together of my vehicle. Tell you a little bit about the history and what kind of condition she's in at the moment. For those who know what it is, it's a Vauxhall Ventora. It's an FD 1968 model. And what's its claim to fame? Well, its claim to fame is it ran in the 1968 London to Sydney Marathon. Here's a photo of the car, a publicity photo of it with the Jim Russell International Racing Drivers School. That's Jim Russell there, third from the left, behind in his signature cardigan. Chap on the left is Douglas Morris. Next is David Walker, who's an Australian Formula One driver. Then Jim Russell, then Brian Morris. Now, what's so important about this car? Well, besides running in the 68 London-Sydney Marathon, successfully completing the event, well, it happened to be that the car was made in 68. It came off the production line in May of 1968, and it was allocated to the Vauxhall Research Laboratory. And at the Vauxhall Research Laboratory, it then went on to be tested at Chaul End. And as people might know, Vauxhall completed the FD Victor/Ventora testing program at Chaul End before they decommissioned. And here is the car being tested by none other than, if we get a very close view and you can see, you might be able to make him out. Well, that's the late great Sir Jack Brabham. The car was tested by Sir Jack as part of a group of vehicles that he was going to put his name on, being the Brabham Viva and what became known in Australia as the Brabham Tirana. So he was over there in 1968, and this photograph was taken around about early June, and the weather conditions, as you can tell, but not all that flash. Here is the car, sorry about that noise, here is the car arriving in Sydney. That's Hyde Park in Sydney. At the conclusion of the London-Sydney event on the 18th of December 1968. So the car had arrived a little bit worse for wear, but it did arrive, and there's some stories about the damage to the front and other reasons why the car finished the way it did. So here is the vehicle as it sits today. This is, I'll take my bloody flip-flops off, hey, so they don't make a noise. Alright, this is the vehicle as it sits today. Fairly well original in most respects. We're not allowed to run with the rhubarb that was on the front because of vehicle safety requirements here in Australia. So that had to be removed. That looks a little bit cumbersome in its own way as well, but still it's safe to do so. Original wheels, original interior, very light panel work. The underneath of the car is still as it was in 1968, so very, very lightly restored, this vehicle, and complete in most respects. So car 40, it's the Jim Russell Racing Drivers School. There are the drivers on the side. The car is pretty much interior wise as it was back in the day. Original seating. Those seats were manufactured by Contour, a company called Contour in London, specifically for this vehicle. Those seats are fully reclining. They are the same colour as the rest of the interior, as you can tell. The rest of the interior is still in pretty good order, and this is the way this car was driven to Australia. This is the way it was prepared. Those holes in the dash are there for a series of 4 clocks. That's the original Holder speed pilot. That's an average speed unit, and that they use that to calculate their average speed between sections. So they remained on time. That small unit down there is a UHF. That's a later addition. The original glove box, etc., goes into that location, and that's included with the car. So here are fully reclining headrests, seats. The rear seat was not in the car in 1968. It was not in the event. This seat actually is the original seat from this car, and the second owner of the car went to the UK, went and had a talk to Jim Russell, and Jim Russell said, well, guess what I've got hanging up in the shed, and he pulled all this material, these items out, and they had them sent back to Australia. So they are the absolute original seats from the car. What was in the car was a board. There was a board up the back here that took the rear swab away, and took the back seat away, and there was just a board with sponge. The board went out to the rear of the seats here, and underneath was all of their spare parts and tools. So the whole bottom of the car was just had a layer of timber, and then a big sponge bed put on there. So have a good look. There are no rear seat belts. So the third person in this car, mainly Douglas Morris, travelled right the way across the world in the back of this car without a seat belt. They are the original seat belts from 1968. In the car, in the boot, we've tried to keep this vehicle as original as we can, with the single exhaust. We've tried to recreate all of the signage on the vehicle. A couple of things inside. We've had to refit another fuel tank. For long distance driving, this car needs at least 100 litre capacity. So we've refitted a fuel tank. If you see that black patch down there in the centre, that's where all the pumps are. That used to be a hole for centre mounted shock absorbers. So this vehicle, put together by Coburn Improvements in London at the time. They were in Hampstead. We've been speaking to an engineer who worked on this car, who actually put all of the piping through the vehicle, all the brakes and all the fuel, etc. was all moved from underneath the car and put through the interior, and Dudley did all of that work. So we've been able to confirm that this car was actually prepared at Coburn Improvements as part of its preparation. We understand that the vehicle was being a factory car and being a test vehicle, it could not be sold. Therefore, the car had to be given away or wrecked. So it was given away, and it went to Coburn's. They had the engine pulled out. The engine was then sent off to Bill Blydenstein, and he balanced it within an inch of its life. Coburn's continued to work and did all the chassis preparations, all of the chassis work at the front to strengthen the car, to update the suspension. All the suspension underneath is has got skid plates. It's got fully welded a lot more spot welds in the chassis of this car. Let me just get down here and show you a little bit underneath. For example, here's the skid plates, etc. As you can see, the vehicle is not restored. We have kept away from restoring the vehicle in any way. Sump guard has had to be replaced because it was pretty well destroyed. It wasn't there, but all the mountings were there and everything else was done. So that's some of the an example of the preparations that were done, and that is typical Chris Coburn improvements. A lot of things that came with the car are straight out of the dealer Team Vauxhall or Chris Coburn product brochure. For example, the air horns. Interior is the map light and things like that, and if you have a look at the very early dealer Team Vauxhall brochures, you'll find those items in there. So pretty much original, but that motor sings. It absolutely sings. Typically these engines get about 140 brake horsepower as a standard unit out of the factory. This is probably putting out around about the 165 brake horsepower, which is not a lot, but when the thing revs all day, runs all day at 5,000 revs and just runs all day, it's doing 100 miles an hour, 165 kilometres an hour, day in, day out. And that's what you want of a touring car. So original oil bath heater, air filter, sorry. Pretty much a standard car, but very well prepared. You may be able to make out down there some of the extra strengthening that went into the car. The whole chassis rails and everything have all been strengthened. So this car has been really well prepared. Don't know if you can make out. There's the chassis, made in the UK. Alright. So, fairly unique automobile. What else can I say? Has had both David Walker, who drove the car in the event, went on to become a Formula 1 driver with Team Lotus in 1972 with Emerson Fittipaldi. Also Sir Jack Brabham has driven this car. Also when the car went to Jim Russell to be put back together, went to the racing school and they put it back together, but who else was there working as part of the team there was Ralph Furman, and Ralph Furman helped on this, putting this car together, and it went, and Ralph Furman, as you know, went on to create Van Diemen race cars. So a lot of pretty talented hands on this vehicle, and there she is. She's goes like a rocket, behaves really well on the road, and cruises on the open road. If you really want to just hum it along, yeah, 3,500, you're about 120 kilometres an hour. All right, so that's pretty good going. All right, I just thought I'd share this with you. That's my old girl. What a wonderful piece of history. Thanks for watching.